Venom. From his infamous introduction in comics to mainstream media of TV shows, video games, action figures, and now the big screen, this nightmare fuel is iconic with his terrifying look, razor teeth, freakish tongue, and that voice. Oh, that voice. Listen, strap in, because today we're diving into the chaotic, creepy, and absolutely awesome story of one of Marvel's most iconic villains. Good old Venom. For me, it was probably the 1990s animated Spider-Man series, or the Marvel vs. Capcom, one of the two, but everybody remembers their first time laying their eyes on the black and white horror. Now, for you, it could have been his reveal, Amazing Spider-Man 299 and 300 in the comics, or even more recently, just in the Spider-Man 2 game that just came out. However, Venom has been relevant for 40 years, and with the new movie coming out here pretty soon, he's showing no signs of slowing down. Let's catch up to speed. Now, Venom's origin as a symbiote, which is a symbiotic alien capable of living inside other living things, began somewhere far more sinister than New York, but deep in space under the reign of Knull, their creator, a dark deity of the symbiotes. Now, Knull originally created the symbiotes to amass a massive army and establish himself as the nexus of their hive mind, using them to conquer countless planets and devour entire civilizations across billions of years. And trust me, you're gonna hear all about this guy today, but we're gonna have his own video pretty soon. Now, Venom, being a bit of a rebel, wasn't into the whole use 'em and lose 'em philosophy. It wanted a real relationship, and when the other symbiotes found out, he was rejected by its own kind for seeking a bond with its host, instead of, controlling them. But you see, Venom wasn't just any symbiote. He was actually the 998th of his kind, one destined for something far more chaotic. Now, eventually, the Kree explorers will stumble upon this outcast symbiote, wondering if it's defective. Now, Venom bonded to Telkar. It was a soldier who trains alongside them and sends them off on covert missions during the Kree and Skrull War. Now, fast forward a bit, and Telkar pulls a bit of a Men in Black move when things get dicey, erasing the symbiote's memory of their time together before parting ways. And this is where we're going to get into a bit of a conflict, right? Some people go back and forth, what was his actual origin, because Venom had his mind erased so many times. He recalls being born in an egg on Clintar, his home planet, but he doesn't remember a lot, and so it's a bit of a mystery. Now, to Venom, this is the story of what he would call his first host, at least the one that he remembers. It was an alien native to an icy world that he believes was a noble warrior. Turns out the guy wasn't as noble as he seemed, and he used the symbiote to commit a genocide, which sent the poor symbiote on an emotional roller coaster of rage and aggression. Now, even after all of this, Venom didn't want to dominate its future hosts. It just wanted to protect them, a sentiment that he stood by that led to another symbiote known as Hive to lock Venom up, fearing it would ruin the family's reputation. Now, the place that he was locked up in, well, it ended up being used by the Beyonder into Battle World. But that's a story for another day. Now, moving along, we enter Secret Wars, the symbiote's first human host, which was actually freaking Deadpool, who happened to come across it in a prison while on Battle World, and he was hoping for a makeover or whatever, and he wore the creature for a few minutes before realizing it was freaking alive, and it was messing with his mind, and so he decided to go ahead and put it back in a prison moments before the arrival of Spider-Man, which leads us to the story of Venom and Spider-Man. A really good story at that, in fact, was the first video I ever did on this channel. If you want to go check that out, you can pause the video or check it out after, but kind of the cliff notes is Spider-Man found it, realized it was alive, wanted to ditch it, and, well, he did. Now, we fast forward the separation with Symbiote Spider-Man, and we enter Eddie Brock, a journalist whose life was ruined by Spider-Man and who was on the verge of, ending it all. With Eddie's hatred for Spider-Man and the symbiote's need for revenge, they bonded, giving birth to the Venom we all know and love. A perfect fusion of Brock's fury and the symbiote's bloodlust. Now, the only problem is that Eddie's hatred for Peter warped the symbiote's own feelings towards its former host, turning them into a dark obsession with either reclaiming or destroying Spider-Man. Now, you see, when Venom bonded with Eddie Brock, they started speaking in first person, using the word we in plural form because, they're now a tag team. Although every now and then, Eddie would like to get personal sometimes, and he would call it my other and I, like it was some 90s sitcom. Now, together, they took on Spider-Man more times than anyone cares to count, and while they came close to winning a few times, Spider-Man always seemed to slip out of their slimy grip and always win. Because, the good guy usually always wins, but the problem with this was, Venom, the symbiote, was once with Spider-Man, and it was starting to not feel this Eddie connection, right? It kind of missed its former soulmate. Yep, Venom kept trying to run back to Peter like a clingy ex, plotting to kill him while occasionally sliding into his DMs. And to top this all off, it was really messing with Eddie. The symbiote messed with his mind big time, making him think he had a dead uncle, a sister he didn't remember, and he even had this whole story arc of convincing Eddie that he had cancer. It's it's freaking dark. Like, just classic, like, the definition of gaslighting. Now, we fast forward during a battle between Spider-Man, Sticks, and Stones. Yes, that's actually their name. Sticks' deadly touch seemingly took out the Venom symbiote, and Eddie Brock ended up in a normal human prison, sharing a cell with a guy named Cletus Kasady, a freaking deranged serial killer, and there's a lot to talk about on this guy. It's Carnage, actually, if you guys know, and Carnage is the definition of a badass you don't want to mess with. In fact, they're like Venom and Spider Man didn't want to mess with him. He's absolutely crazy, but we're not going to talk much about him. I'll refer to him throughout the video, but he's going to get his own damn video. And if you guys want to see that, be sure to like today's video, subscribe. If I see enough numbers, I'll take that as I should definitely do it. Now, Venom and Eddie eventually made a fresh start in San Francisco, playing superhero in the underground city. But you see, after Carnage, their ability to reproduce caught the attention of the Life Foundation, who I covered this entire story when I talk about Scream. So again, go check out that short video. But essentially, they made a bunch of offspring off Venom, creating a ton of different symbiotes. Venom's hunger for destruction and, well, flesh became overwhelming, pushing Eddie to feed its growing appetite. And when Eddie refused, the symbiote abandoned him, at times even trying to devour himself. Which I love this. It was able to tame this sensation by feeding it chocolate, which you'll see throughout this story that Venom has this, like, alter ego of liking chocolate, even watching like Netflix at times. But through all this, it made Eddie really fearful of this symbiote's influence on his mind. Now, for a small bit of time, the symbiote did separate from Eddie, only to return later and drag him back into villainy. But for a while, it briefly took over characters like Wolverine, who had to fight back with his berserker rage, and one unfortunate soul not worth going too much into, known as Angelo. Small story short, this guy proved unworthy to Venom, and the symbiote literally ditched him mid-jump, leading to this guy to, splat. Now, lastly, before returning to Eddie, Venom bonded with who you guys would know as Scorpion. However, this was a crazy story arc where the symbiote grew even more monstrous and going crazy, leading the Scorpion down a path of no return. And that is until Miss Marvel and Spider-Man showed up to crash the chaos. However, we do fast forward, and eventually the US military swooped in and removed the symbiote from the Scorpion and took it into custody. Now, again, I know I'm referring you guys to a lot of videos. There's so much out there on Venom, and you really can't find it all in one place, but luckily, I just covered a bunch of symbiotes. So as I said before, we had Symbiote Spider-Man, we had Scream, and now we enter Flash Thompson, or, Agent Venom, who has an incredible story, and this is going to be that part of the video that you guys can go check out. But essentially, the guy that bullies Spider-Man teams up with this military hero, and they go on a ton of different adventures. There's a lot to catch up there. We're going to fast forward to after all that. Now, we move past the Agent Venom storyline, and we arrive at Eddie Brock once again bonding with the symbiote. And it's here that we kind of see a struggle between Venom having some weird habits of trying to be good and then ultimately being evil, then trying to be good again, and then, trying to eat a priest. Because you see, inherently, a Venom, wants to be good, but it can't fight like its symbiote nature. And you see this a lot throughout the comics. There's so much of this, but we're going to go to where things get truly chaotic. We have some grounded story here, but things really start to fire off and go crazy. Only tidbit that we're kind of skipping is that, well, Venom has a complicated family tree, and there's somebody named Dylan Brock that happens to be a big part of it. It's his son, whose mother was Anne Wang, and when Anne was briefly bonded to Venom, a little piece of the symbiote called a codex got left behind in her, and the result was a surprise pregnancy. Now, eventually, she sadly does pass away, and Dylan grew up not even knowing that Eddie was his father. But more on this later. Now, as time moves along, the Venom symbiote started having bad dreams about his creator, Knull, that led the god of symbiotes to control Venom for a short period until finally the madness put Eddie into a comatose state. And it all led to this moment where Venom was looking at Eddie, looking at the chaos, and kind of that classic, it's not you, it's me. Goodbye. However, gotcha once again, because this thing keeps going back to Eddie after a run-in with Carnage, because of course it's always Cletus Kasady. Venom reunited with Eddie just in time before Carnage pushed them into an oncoming train. Now, what followed was your typical battle with a towering skeletal dark Carnage monster situation, the usual stuff. And things got pretty messy when Venom and Spider-Man teamed up to stop Dark Carnage from getting his hands on some serious, dangerous codexes. Now, naturally, all this led to Venom's symbiote going to full panic mode inside Eddie's head, and when Carnage started infected everybody in sight, Venom, instead of, helping Eddie, ditched him and went to Bruce Banner, making a Venom freaking Hulk. Now, in this final showdown, Eddie ended up taking out Dark Carnage with the Necro sword because, swords make everything cooler, and thus concluded a happy story. But, it's the symbiote saga, so it's just pure chaos, and, well, a small little thing happened freaking Knull arrived. Now, Eddie and Venom had a plan to take down Knull and the oncoming threat with some help from, you know, the heavy hitters like Thor and Sentry. But when Thor went MIA and Knull casually just ripped Sentry in half, things fell apart, literally. Now, you see, Eddie, the ever-optimist, tried to offer himself to Knull to save the Earth, but Knull just kind of laughed and ripped Venom from Eddie and, well, left him for dead. And I want to stop here and just say, if you got a little bit lost in some of this, it's kind of normal. Like, again, there was a lot of grounded stuff, and now we enter an age of like symbiote dragons and like consciousness going into what they call a hive mind, which, to quickly just fill you in on that, the symbiote hive mind is this like mental realm that physically connects the symbiotes to one another and their god, while also serving as an afterlife for deceased symbiotes and their hosts. Now, Venom begged Knull to let him save Eddie desperately, but Knull just ignored that and absorbed Venom into his symbiote armor and all but extinguished its individuality. Now, we'll go into this more when we talk about Knull's story, but eventually Venom did break free from Knull's control, reunited with Eddie, and got ready for round 2. That sounds like a friggin' Dr. Seuss book. Now, I'm telling you, this is where things get a little wonky. With the help of a reborn Flash, who's now a symbiote dragon, which I would say is crazy, but I mean, I watched Dragon Ball Z in the 90s. There was much more like, what the hell in there. Eddie Brock infiltrated the hive mind, but Knull tried to destroy him. Now, things get even more crazy, and the God of Light rips Eddie's consciousness from Venom's symbiote and resurrects his body, and though Venom did disappear temporarily, it did promise to find Eddie once again. Which, again, to quote Dragon Ball Z, like, when someone dies in Marvel, for the most part, it's not really dying, you know? Like, you know they're gonna come back. Like, Goku died how many times, and you're like, he's fine. Now, after Knull's defeat, Venom became the god of symbiotes. That's right, Eddie went from the guy who was about to end his own life to legit a symbiote god. And I feel like that's a good stopping point. You know, there's a lot of comics to go through, like, quite literally hundreds of Venom comics, and we did skip a couple stories here and there. I mean, there's more to Venom, like his son Codex and Dylan go through their whole thing, but I want to make sure that I make a video on just that to give that the proper time. And I know it was all over, but I hope you did learn more about Venom from his early days as a symbiote to quite literally becoming a god. And again, he shows no signs of slowing down. The dude is everywhere. My freaking neighbor's got a tattoo of him. He's got the movie coming out, and so this maybe caught you up to speed. Again, guys, if you enjoyed the video, it helps a lot if you do subscribe. It helps show me that you guys want more of these. And comment down below what character you want me to cover next. Anyway, guys, have a good one. Have a great one. Till the next one, stay cozy.